Hi, Lily. I thought, okay, here. I was sitting there, I went home, had a little bite to eat. I know, I was saying. I know, he's actually coming to the state where we go. Has some stuff out there. He actually, the other night, he said for the panel for president, like. I'm gonna go ahead and set up the page, but if the alarm goes off, something, it's my fault. That's what I was started last.
Test, test, test. Test, test.
Very small. There is. One time I tried to learn how to set the alarm. So, yeah, and sorry.
Good. We'll start in a couple minutes, everybody. 2-minute warning. Great. I think that works.
Testing 1, 2. That tests well. No, too loud. No, I think it's good.
Test 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello. Okay. I think that's okay. Although maybe a little tall.
Okay, everybody, we're going to start in about a minute. So if you could take your seats or stand where you like. Everybody ready over here? Okay, everyone can hear me, right? Good. Okay, I want to welcome everybody. My name is Peter Warner, and I'm town moderator, not the town manager. Thank God. I want to welcome you. Can't read my own writing. I want to welcome everybody to the annual Norwich Town meeting. This is not a regular meeting of the select board, nor is it a regular meeting of the school board. If it was, I wouldn't be here. This is, I consider, the people's meeting. And it's a chance for the people to be heard, as well as interact directly with both the town government and the school board, as well as to get pivotal information about this year's warrant articles. There have been town managers in the state of Vermont since 1749. When Vermont became an independent republic 30 years later, this is a short speech, don't worry. The first order of business in the Vermont General Assembly was to elect a moderator for the meeting. So I'm honored to serve. I have big footsteps to fill, especially John Carroll, who was a town moderator for many years, my predecessor. This is not a pure town meeting, as many of you know. It's an informational meeting. We vote tomorrow by what they call Australian ballot, and the polls will open at 7 a.m. and they'll close at 7 p.m. right here in Tracy Hall. But the spirit of the meeting that goes back to 1749 is that we come together and we discuss important town issues in a civil manner. I expect a civil discussion as we engage with town issues. If I have to, I will restore order with this item here. And apparently, I have another one in case this one breaks. But in 2 years of being town moderator, I don't know that I've ever had to use it. But tonight could be the night. I hope not. In any case, welcome everybody. Here's how tonight's going to go. We're going to start with the school board presentation. Every year we switch off. So last year was the town, and this year the school board will start. And then the town will give their presentations. How this will work is after the presentations, each presentation, I will give time for direct questions of the school board and of the town manager, as well as the select board. A limited time, because after that, I want to get to the town warrant articles where I will go through one by one, the school board articles, the town budget articles, et cetera, and all the budget allocation articles, et cetera. A couple years ago, I put them out of order. I'm not doing that this year. I'm going in order, so don't worry. But it could be a long night, so I want to get started. And I want to first introduce the school board. Is Garrett Palm here? Garrett's not here, but he's the chair. Michael Costa, vice chair. Michael, there's Michael. Lisa Christie's here. Neil Odell is here. He's going to be giving the presentation, and Lily Tryman. Great. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Neil. Neil's going to talk for between 15 and 20 minutes, and then, is the mic still working? Good. And then, like I said, I'll open it up for about 10 minutes of questioning of Neil directly about the presentation. And again, I will then go through the warrant articles after the town presentation one by one, so you will have another opportunity to ask direct questions about the warrant articles. Everybody clear on the ground rules tonight? last year I allowed 2.5 minutes with a cutoff point of 3 for comments. I'm going to stick to that this year. If you want to make another comment about the same issue as a follow-up, I'll give you a minute. All right. I want everyone to feel that they have the opportunity to speak, and I'll make that happen within the limits of keeping this thing moving along so we get home before 10. All right. A lot earlier than 10, I hope. So Neil, you're on.
All right. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Geez, hang on. All right. So at the risk of inducing some PTSD in everybody, I just want to remind folks where we were last year. At this time, we were looking at just over an 18% tax rate increase here at town meeting. When the final tax bills came out later that summer, the situation was a little bit better. It was just over 16% tax rate increase. But I just wanted to let you all, well, I'm not going to let you all know this was hard, right? This was hard on our community. It was hard on my colleagues and I on the board in trying to put this forward for you. The budget passed, right? A fair number of you voted in favor of the budget. But that aside, right, whether or not you voted in favor of the budget or not, and we were assured that the microphone was working this year, you all paid your property taxes. And that was a lot. And I just wanted to take a moment tonight and say thank you for that, whether you supported the budget or not, because you gave the schools the funding that we needed in order to operate a really great program, not just at MCS, but at the Richmond Middle School and the Hanover High School as well, too. And you deserve to be thanked for that, so thank you. That being said, you can clap. Yeah, I mean, you owe yourself a round of applause, right? Now, that being said, as we went into this season's budgeting, we wanted to try to be pretty conservative based on what happened last year. So back in August, the board set some guidelines, some parameters, looking for a budget increase of between 1.5% and 2%, excluding any negotiated labor contracts or settlements with both our teachers and support staff unions. We did this because we were heading into negotiations in the fall, and we just weren't sure where things were going to pan out. As you will see later on, we were able to meet this budget guideline. So this year, the news is a little bit different. We're not back to where we were prior to last year, but we are forecasting a tax rate of $224.58, a decrease of about 3%. That's an assumption that all articles in both Norwich and Dresden pass. All right, what goes into that tax rate calculation? There are several factors that influence the Norwich tax rate. For those of you that have been here before, you're familiar with these slides. First up is the MCS budget. That is the amount of money that it costs to serve our kids in pre-K through 6 at the Marion Cross School. Next up is the Dresden budget. That's the amount of money necessary to run the Richmond Middle School and the Hanover High School across the river, our students in grades 7 through 12. Next is the number of students that we educate, or more accurately, the number of weighted students that we educate. And that's to account for differences in the cost of certain pupils, for example, English language learners or students that are living in poverty. Fourth are the yield numbers. And these are set by the legislature each year, typically at the end of the session. And these will change based on the health of the education fund in Vermont, but they'll also change based on collectively what school boards all across the state spend on education. Last is the common level of appraisal, which you all know is a means of adjusting local property rates based on recent home sales. And as you'll see later on in the presentation, this year, how the CLA is applied in determining your tax rate has changed. Okay, let's dig into each one of these things just a little bit more. First up is the MCS budget. We are proposing a budget that is up 4.12%, just over $300,000. You may remember from the previous slide that our budget guidelines set us, we were looking for a tax rate increase of between 1.5% and 2%, excluding negotiated settlements. So how did we do? If we back out the increased costs associated with negotiation with those negotiated settlements, so that's salaries and benefits increases, we see that our increase actually came in just under our guidelines at 1.43%. I do want to take a moment though right now to thank both our teachers and our support staff negotiating teams. If you remember last year when I gave this budget presentation, part of the budget last year included increases in salaries and benefits that were catch-up payments to make up for a protracted set of negotiations that went on for almost 2 years. This year, when we went into negotiations, both sides were determined to try to come to a settlement in time so that we made sure that the costs of those settlements were included in the budget that I am presenting tonight. And I am happy that we were able to do that. We finished up bargaining in both of those units in January of this year. And so I owe a great debt of thanks to both the support staff and the teachers tonight for helping us meet that goal. Okay, digging into the MCS budget just a bit more. There are 2 items in the budget that have a huge impact on the tax rate. Those are enrollment and staffing. Enrollment is important because education funding in Vermont is based on how much money you spend per student. You can see from this slide that we are anticipating pretty much level enrollment for next year, forecasting 326 students pre-K through 6 at Marion Cross, pretty much the same as what we've got this year. Staffing is important because one of the largest budget items in the expenditure budget is salaries and benefits. So how many people you'll have on staff actually matters. You'll see that staffing is pretty much flat, slight decrease from 55 FTE or full-time equivalents down to 54.9 for next year. What does that mean for class sizes next year? You'll see that we're looking at 2 sections in pre-K 4th and 6th grade for next year, 3 sections in all of the other grades. I do want to, though, just note that we have a pre-K program at Marion Cross that has been pretty attractive over the last several years for parents. You'll see from the slide here, we've got 36 slots available in pre-K. When Sean shared the numbers with me just a couple of days ago, we had 56 applicants for those slots. So it remains a pretty attractive program. I know the administration of the board is probably going to look at that over the next year and see if there are ways that we're able to fit more kids into that program. All right, moving on to expenditures. What we can see from this view of the budget is that regular education and special education consume almost 65% of the budget. All of that predominantly is in the form of salaries, payroll taxes, and benefits. We're going to take a look at the expenditures for next year, and you'll see this is a graph that shows the changes from last year to this year. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the bigger changes. On the technology line item, we're up just over $37,000 this year. This is actually due primarily to changes as to where we are capturing these costs in the budget. We are moving some technology costs from the purchased and professional services function code to the online services and subscription function code. So those of you budget geeks out there that know what that means, just means we move some money around and now it's showing up in technology where it wasn't showing up there previously. The increase in special education is primarily the result of 3 things: an increase in special education certified staff, an increase in wages, the result of those negotiated settlements that I talked about previously, and finally, another double-digit increase in healthcare premiums this year, healthcare insurance, 12% increase in healthcare again this year. We just can't seem to get away from it. Next, SAU assessment. This includes just over $66,000 associated with a capital improvement plan project. Over the past couple of years, our administration has worked really hard to complete a facilities assessment, not just here at Marion Cross, but on both sides of the river. And the plan is to use those facility assessments to develop a maintenance plan, a capital improvement plan. And so some of that money is going towards that work. There's another part of this increase that comes from wage rate increases that are being distributed to staff at the SAU office. We did some work for a compensation study committee to take a look at the compensation for SAU employees. And this is just to bring them in line with a lot of their peers in neighboring school districts. Not only do we want to be able to attract employees in our SAU office, but we also need to retain them. If you guys have ever tried to take a look at and see what the pool looks like for business administrators these days, it is not pretty. So we want to make sure that we can retain the folks that we currently have on staff. Finally, debt service is up $143,000, the majority of which is a lease payment coming due for the heating system upgrade that we completed just last year. Overall revenues are really quite stable year over year, in total down just a little over $4,000. We have a slight increase in tuition revenue. A few years ago, Vermont moved to a block grant formula for special education funding. This year, that block grant amount is up just $134,000. But our special education extraordinary aid is going down by just over $61,000. The changes in both of these revenue items are due to a change in student population. Okay, so the next item up is the Dresden budget. So Dresden budget, if all articles are approved, is up, will be up 2.34%, just over $725,000. The Dresden assessment, so the amount of money that Norwich owes to cover the Dresden budget, is actually influenced by the number, the percentage split of Norwich versus Hanover kids at both the middle school and the high school. And this year, that percentage split shifted a little bit more towards Norwich. So that change in combination with the increase in the Dresden budget means that the Dresden assessment is up 4.28%, or just over $353,000. Our weighted student count is down from last year. And if you want to remember the previous slide about enrollment, you know that this enrollment is steady, but the weighted count is going down. When the weighted count goes down, your tax rates go up. I'm going to take a brief detour as we talk about weighted students for a little bit. We get the weighted student count from the Agency of Education every year, and every year it has been a struggle. It seems that early on, the number is always wrong. And you can see from the slide here, back in the middle of December, we had numbers of 929 and 922. That was almost a 100 weighted student increase from the number that we had last year. And if you look at it, that would have been awesome, right? Because our tax rate would have been going down by about 15 or 16%. The problem is that we knew the numbers were wrong. And that began a back and forth with the Agency of Education that lasted well over a month until we finally settled on the final number, which was 816.35. That number, you'll see, has got a star next to it because we know that that number is also wrong. But we were pressured by the Agency of Education to validate the number. And we did that with a caveat. Now, the good news is that I know that that number is not that wrong, that it would have a substantial difference on the tax rate that we're talking about tonight. But it is wrong because the data that we gave to them can clearly show that that number is not right. I mention this tonight because damn, is it frustrating. And I just wanted you all to know about it. There's not a whole lot right now that we can do about it, but I just wanted to get it off my chest. We're going to move on. The yield numbers. Our system of education financing in Vermont provides some measure of local control. So local school boards, local communities get to determine how much they want to spend for education. But it's the state's responsibility to make sure that that amount of revenue is raised. So remember, We get to decide on how much we want to spend, but the state then has to make sure that it raises enough revenue to cover that. And that's where the yield numbers come in. The state sets the yield numbers to make sure that we raise the right amount of revenue to cover all of those voter-approved budgets across the state of Vermont. This year, and I want to also note that these numbers are estimates. The actual yield numbers don't get set until the end of the legislative session, when all of that budget information has come in, things have settled, and they know exactly how much needs to be raised in taxes. So the number that you see tonight is just an estimate. This likely will change. For this year, we're estimating a property yield number of 8,553 and an income yield number of 12,260. There's an asterisk next to that 8,553 number, is because that has been adjusted by a statewide common level of appraisal number this year for the first time, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. The final factor in the tax rate calculation is the adjustment of our equalized homestead tax rate by the common level of appraisal. And for the 6th year in a row, you'll see that our common level appraisal has dropped. It's now down to 61.81. And remember, when the CLA goes down, your tax rates go up. And yes, we're going through a reappraisal. And I know that when I leave this meeting and you get your tax bills later on this year, all of the numbers that I've shared with you tonight about a tax rate are going to be wrong. They're going to look incredibly different by the time you see your tax bills this summer. Just remember, though, that when the CLA goes up and your tax rate comes down because of the reappraisal, the other thing that's likely to have happened is that your house value went up as well, too. And so you need to consider those two things together. Tax rate times house value is the amount that you pay. And so while the rate may look dramatically different on your tax bills, what you're likely to be paying is probably going to be pretty much about the same. All right. Before we jump into the tax rate calculation, I wanted to briefly talk about a change that was made to the funding formula last year. So just when you think that they can't make things more complicated, they made things more complicated. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rebecca. Those guys are not responsible for this. I'm not going to call them out on this. But we have a new figure now to talk about, and that's called the statewide adjustment. The change here is designed to make the pre-CLA tax rate closer to the post-CLA tax rate. It's an optics thing, gang, right? It's set up so that we don't feel like the CLA is changing things that much. In fact, if we were to back this out, the final tax rate that you get under this new formula is exactly the same as the tax rate that you would have gotten under the old formula. It's just that some of those intermediate steps don't look as dramatic anymore because of this change. So this year, the statewide adjustment is 72.36, and we're going to see how that gets factored in here. So the formula is really quickly: property tax rate, you take your per pupil spending. You divide that by the property yield number, this time times the statewide CLA. You then get the equalized tax rate, which you divide by the cent discount, which is now divided by the statewide CLA. We'll talk about the cent discount in just a second. You divide that by the local CLA, which is now divided by the statewide CLA, and that gives you your local tax rate. The good news is, if there's some good news, it's that the income tax rate formula has not changed. So that still remains as is. Talk about the cent discount. So last year at this time, we were talking about this massive change in pupil weights, Act 127, because Norwich was impacted quite substantially by that change in weights. We were provided a provision that basically phased in this new higher tax rate. They phased it in by providing us a cent discount on the tax rate in the first 5 years. We are now in year 2 of that phase-in. So our cent discount should be 15%, but because it is now divided by the statewide CLA, the cent discount now becomes 21 cents. So quickly, the tax rate calculation, take the Marion Cross budget, you add in the Dresden assessment, gives you total expenditures, you subtract out the revenues, which gives you net education spending. You take that amount, divide it by the long-term weighted ADM students, so that weighted student count, that then gets divided by the adjusted property yield number to get you equalized homestead tax rate. Take out the cent discount, Get your discounted tax rate, adjust by the CLA, which is also adjusted by the statewide CLA to get your final tax rate. 225.83 is what we're forecasting. Similar calculations for the income adjusted tax rate, 2.9846. That is also a decrease from last year. All right, that's enough about numbers. What do you get for the money that you spend here? You get some pretty damn good results. And if we take a look at just a couple of measures, we're looking at English language arts, percent of students at Marion Cross and statewide that are testing proficient and above in 22-23 in this category. Consistently across the board, we're, high 80s, mid 80s, 90. It's noticeable though when you look at the gap between how the Marion Cross kids are doing versus state average. Similarly in math, the scores are pretty telling. Standardized assessments are not the only thing that we track at Marion Cross. This table, there's a lot of numbers in here, but I just wanted to note, one of the things that we do track are referrals for behavioral issues at Marion Cross. And the thing that we want to note here is that we have seen things trending downward since 22-23 school year. Now, I know that there's still a few months left in 24-25, so the 83 number is probably a little low at this point. But I think this is a great indication of how are the kids actually doing in the building. And we see those numbers trending down. Mr. Moderator, I hope I went quickly enough for you. I just want to finish with one thing, gang. There's a lot of stuff going on in Montpelier right now around education reform. I put together a 2 or 3 page document, shared it with my board colleagues the other night. We have got printouts, left them in the back of the room. If you're interested to know in a brief summary of what's going on, what the proposal is from the governor, that information is in the back for you to pick up.
Standing always. Neil, thank you. Am I on? Good. Thank you very much, Neil. I want to make one tiny adjustment. Neil mentioned Rebecca and Jim, who are in the house. They're going to speak in a moment. But I do want to give people time to directly question Neil and the rest of the board about any aspects of the presentation that you'd like to ask about. Again, I'm going to go through the warrants specifically, and you can also comment or question then as well. But here's a chance to ask specifically about the presentation if you'd like. Any questions, comments? Yes. And you can step over to the mic. Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, welcome.
Hi, I'm Susan Barrett. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live on New Boston Road. I have a question for you, Neil, colleagues. How would more diversity in the pupil makeup, being whether race, ethnicity, income levels, things like that, how would that impact that pupil weighting? And could having more places to live in Norwich that are more affordable impact that? And maybe you don't have to answer the second part, but that's the way I see it.
Great. Thank you. Neil?
Sure. Board, do you want me to take that one, or does somebody want to? Okay. Yeah, so thanks for the question. So in general, yes. Increased diversity, as long as it sort of came in the specific categories for those weighted pupils, does have a positive impact on the tax rate. So assuming the same amount of spending, increased weighted students, because we pay, your tax rates are based on how much you spend per weighted student. If you change the denominator, right, then you can bring down the tax rate. Socioeconomic diversity is one. English language learners is another. So yes, then to go to the second part of your question, if we were able to provide more housing in town to attract more people, more families that met those categories, we could have potentially a positive impact on the tax rate in this town.
Great. Thank you for the question. Any other questions for Neil about the presentation? All right, seeing none. Rebecca, Holcomb, Jim. Thank you for addressing the audience. Thanks again, Neil. Thank you very much. And Rebecca Holcomb and Jim.
I knew that would come back to haunt me.
So welcome Rebecca Holcomb and Jim Maslin, our state representatives, for a few minutes each.
As you may notice, we're quite a pair. Rebecca has a broken foot, and I have a very badly damaged ankle. But we do the best we can. So there's any number of things I could talk about. I'm just going to pick up a couple of them. One is Neil alluded, or when he started, in simple language, everything's going to change between now and when we get out of the State House, maybe at the end of April or May, because there's a whole lot we really don't know yet. We haven't a clue as to what the yield will be or what we could predict for tax rates because there's so much in flux. As many of you are aware, in Norwich, Zoe Saunders and the governor have proposed a radical restructuring of how education is funded and delivered in Vermont. And the one thing I can assure you is we won't do that this year. There's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. Those of you who enjoy watching us work on Zoom online come and can watch all our committees work, all the testimony that we get, you can get either in real term or late at night when you haven't got anything else to do. But really, there's a whole lot of very sophisticated stuff that we're being educated about, and what exactly we're going to deal with it, how we're going to meld that into the end of our session work is really unknown at this point in time. We can't predict tax rates. We can't predict what the yield will be or the yield rates will be, and it'll be some time before we can do that. What we can assure you is we recognize very clearly that Vermonters are hurting financially and that tax spending, tax rates are very much on everybody's mind all the time. So even though we're not going to pass the end all and be all solution to this by the end of this session, we will make every effort we can to bring down your taxes to a manageable level to the best we can. As you may know, the governor proposed putting $700 million or something like that to buy down tax rates for this year, but we won't do that because if we spend it all this year, we won't have it available next year. So stay tuned and watch us work as you can do that. I can just say a couple of things about Zoe Saunders' proposal. The governor's proposal is, as some of you may know, they are proposing to reorganize how education is delivered and administered in Vermont by taking all the school districts, all the towns, and cramming them into about 5 or more, depending on where we end up, different school districts. And they propose that in doing so, we would need, maybe half as many administrators and maybe half as many teachers, which will do devastating things to your children in our communities. So we're not going to do that. And it's going to take us quite a while to sort this through, as you understand. And as Rebecca and I say repeatedly, we welcome your input, your comments, whatever they may be. We learn from you, truth be told. The other thing I want to say that we probably will be able to do, or just give you one indication of the situation with Vermont school funding formula and whatnot is upside down of the way most other school systems are funded throughout the United States. What we do here is you all pass your school budgets and the total amount of money to be raised is calculated. And then we back into that a tax rate that's going to provide enough money to fund your schools for the coming year. Almost every other state does exactly the opposite. They figure out what the budget's going to be, and the schools figure out what they can do with money that's available. And from that, we get a school funding system. But as I said, we do it upside down. You all pass your budgets first, and then we figure out what your tax rate's going to be. And one of the things that we're determined to work on this year is to try to right the ship, so to speak, so that where we end up is not providing which basically a perverse system that has actually the wrong incentives in it. And the other thing that there are a couple of things we're doing. Neil spoke about the CLA. We did some work on the CLA last year so that at least it won't be so volatile as it's been in the last couple of years, because the volatility drives school boards nuts. And we know that, and that's crazy. That's a couple other things. But, well, anyway, there's a bunch of things we're trying to do. If you, as I suggested, if you're up late at night and you want to watch what we're doing, there's any number of different things that we're trying to figure out. One would provide a homestead tax credit that would work more simplistically than our income sensitivity system, which is very complicated for some people. There's a bunch of things that we are working our way through. I can say the presentations that we listen to in our committees are excellent, well prepared, seem to be very well organized, but some of them are completely nuts. There was a fellow 10 days ago who suggested that isn't it great that we can start from scratch and design a whole new system? But has been pointed out to us there are any number of thousands of children who go to school in Vermont, and so we can't start from scratch by simply saying, well, let's brush them aside from now and let's see what kind of a new system we come up with. So really, folks, bear with us, because this is going to be a bumpy ride. We could go on for a long period of time, but I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca because she always fills in the blanks better than I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Hardly. Thank you, Jim. I want to thank your school board. I also want to thank your superintendent, because as Jim said, we're not starting from scratch. We have buildings, we have kids, and you can't sit in Montpelier with a Sharpie and redraw the state and expect it to represent the reality of what we need to do for kids. And Jay, I just want to say thank you to you, because you came up and you talked about a different way of approaching the problem, looking at where kids are, where they live, and where they actually attend school, and looking at what the capacity of those buildings are. And that's what we actually need. We need an evidence-based approach to try to figure out how to do this better with the limited wallet we've got. And you were transformational in the House Education Committee. That's the way this district is standing up and showing up in Montpelier to help us do it better. Unfortunately, the plan on the table is not rooted in reality, as Jim said, and it really matters. It really matters here. The 5 districts have problems, and when you actually read the fine details, it's even worse than I thought it would be. What I will also say is we can't have a funding formula that isn't designed for the kind of system we're trying to produce. The governor's plan assumes that every high school will have at least 650 kids, every middle school will have at least 450 kids, every elementary school will have 450 kids. The district that came in and was presented as the prototypical district assumed that there would be 5 schools with over 800 kids in it. We only have 10 of those in the entire state. So, and they're not here. It just doesn't work. And if we're designing a funding formula that's more like the special ed census block that says, here's the dollars you got, make do. If we get those numbers wrong, we're going to do a lot of damage to kids who are there today and are counting on us to show up and put good schools together so that they can get educated. That's why this is hard. Those numbers are wrong right now, and it would not be responsible to move until we actually understand the cost of educating our kids better. So we are interested in the idea of a foundation formula. We know our current formula doesn't work. It's inflationary and it's poorly targeted. But we can't make the shift until we've done the homework, which hasn't been done yet, to actually figure out what that cost would be. So we will be working on that. We've got some consultants coming in to help and try to patch in where the administration didn't do the work. And we're hoping that we can have something to at least tell you where we're headed down the road. But all of this, what I really want to say is we are hearing from so many of you. One of the problems we have in Norwich is that we are property rich, but we also have a lot of people who've retired, maybe on fixed incomes. And frankly, the cost of living here is not really what they planned for, and it's something they're really struggling to meet. to address that, we have to bring down costs. And we need you to understand that this isn't just about education. About 100 million of the increase in the statewide budget last year for schools was healthcare. You have a 12% increase in healthcare benefits this year, and your board doesn't negotiate that. There's no way they can stay ahead of that and keep down your costs if we don't tackle the cost of healthcare. And it isn't just education. We got beat up about the school budgets. The reality is that the governor didn't budget for that. He came in this year, and in the budget adjustment, we're addressing well over $100 million in unbudgeted, unexpected costs related to healthcare. Healthcare is eating us alive, and we're going to have to do some hard work. Vermont now has the highest marketplace average premiums in the nation, and we have to be figuring out ways to bring down those costs, or every single thing your school does to cut costs is going to be eaten up by increasing healthcare costs, and we're really committed to that. We're also really committed to the issue of housing. You see it here. We don't have the workforce to support the state to take the jobs in the healthcare industry. And you can do whatever fancy tricks you want about workforce development, but if there's no place for people to live, there's no way out of this hole. So you're going to see hard, strategic, and creative thinking around ways to do more on housing, but to do it with less. And we've got some great people in this community who've really been instrumental at the state level in changing how we think about the role of government in supporting and de-risking new kinds of housing development in the state. But that's something that all of us are going to have to lean in and help on, because it's until we tackle those two issues, we're going to continue to be having these conversations about how to bring down costs and make sure people can live here. Thank you so much for all you've done to reach out to us and give us your ideas. We have a flyer in the back of the room that has our email addresses on it. If you have good suggestions, please reach out and give them to us. We've learned so much from you, and thank you for the privilege of serving you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Jim. Thank you.
Rebecca's last point was my point exactly. As some of you may know, there are a number of groups throughout the state who are working online, and for the most part, on different kinds of proposals with regards to education funding and governance and whatnot. I read most of them as often as I can, and they're good ideas. Scattered is probably an impolite word. They're good ideas in many of them, and we're not likely to take any one group's proposal wholeheartedly and say this is what we're going to go with. The issue is it's our responsibility to be informed and fair, and to try to keep abreast of as much of this stuff as we can, given the time we have. And hopefully we pull the best ideas forward, and you'll see them and where we end up with, at least beginning, let's say in April or May when we adjourn, and then in the next year when we try to finally put together a new system that works. So the point being, all of your ideas, as Rebecca just said, are valid. We want to hear all of them, because we need all of your input in order for us to do our job. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And there's no two more accessible public officials than needs to, and you know where to find them, and you can get their emails in the back of the room as well. And I want to thank them both for taking the time to be here tonight, even in their wounded state. So thank you. We're going to move on to the select board presentation. I want to introduce members of the select board who are here tonight. Pamela Smith, the chair. There's Pam. Mary Layton, I believe, is here. Roger Arnold, are you here? Roger? Roger's there. Marcia Calloway's here. Priscilla Vincent is here, I'm sure. Great. And also I want to recognize Town Clerk Lily Tryman, who wears multiple hats tonight. He's somewhere. There she is. Police Chief Matt Romei in the back. Fire Chief Alex Northern. Deputy Chief Matt Sweat is here. And I also want to recognize former town moderator John Carroll, who's also in the house. So with that, I'm going to introduce Town Manager Brennan Duffy, who's going to be giving the Norwich Town presentation. And again, you'll have a chance to ask questions of Brennan both now and also, and the select board also now and when I go over the warrant articles after his presentation. So Brennan, you're up. Thank you.
Just give a second here for the group to assemble. All right, I think we're all set. So as Peter mentioned, my name's Brendan Duffy. I'm the town manager here in Norwich. Been here now about a year and a half in my permanent role, and about a little over 2 years because I started as an intern for about 9 months. So this is my third go around at a town informational meeting, and I'm pleased to be here. I'm glad we got so many people to turn out. This
Can
is
everybody
great.
hear, Brendan? Can everybody hear, Brendan? You good? In the back? Okay, thanks. Good, sir.
I have learned in my 2 years, you have to hold this microphone 4 inches below your chin or you get distortion. So I'm going to try to do that. So with me tonight, as already mentioned, Barry Rosalinda, who's our finance director, who was really instrumental in working on this budget process. She's going to be helping me with our slide deck here, and might have some more detailed information if we have hard questions here that stump the town manager. So hopefully we won't. I am going to try to keep this at a fairly high level tonight as far as our presentation goes. The details of the presented budget are all in the town report. If people haven't got that yet, they are available at the back of the room on a table. So that is where you'll find all of the details behind the budget that we've been working on. I will mention that the process has been pretty extensive. We start this really at the end of September, and we start working with department heads internally throughout the month of October. In November, this kind of goes public, where we start to bring this into the public meetings of the select board. So basically November and December, that was our process. And then the actual budget was approved by the select board in January. And then we've been working really the last 2 meetings on the informational slide presentation you're going to see tonight. So it's about 5 months. And I want to commend again, Barry, for leading that in the finance office, and to all of our department heads who have been diligently working with us as we present the budget that you're going to see tonight, as well as obviously our select board, who has been also dealing with this budget for about 5 months now. I will say, I guess, before we start, I feel this is an honest budget. There's not a lot that can be cut off of here at this point. So I hope that tomorrow when we go into vote, people will take that into account, that a lot of hard work was done to bring in a frugal and honest budget for presentation. So that said, Barry, if you'll slip through the next. So I think we've already had introductions here, so we can go to the next slide. What I did last year and what we're going to do again this year is really just work through the staff that we currently have, because I know a lot of people don't get a chance to meet the folks working here in the town, either at Tracy Hall or in our other departments. I won't read every name off of here, but the new positions that are new since last year, I will mention. So at the top there, obviously the town manager's office. We have an open position, which I'm happy to say tonight, we believe we have filled, and we will have someone else joining us and working 50% of their time in the town manager's office, helping with additional administrative support for the office, and primarily for the select boards, putting meeting packets together, and all of the time and effort that goes into these bi-monthly meetings that we hold. We have one open position right now in the finance office for our staff accountant, and are in the process of interviewing right now, hoping to find a new candidate to take that role. The planning department, we have Stephen True, who is hired as our planning director and zoning administrator. That had been a vacant position for about a year and a half. And so we were happy to find Stephen, and he had started in October. So he's now several months into his role there and getting his feet underneath him. I think it's a really good addition to the town. Next slide. So the police department,
I think Matt had come on in his interim capacity as the police chief at this time last year, but he was basically hired as a permanent position late spring of 2024. So he's now permanent. We also in the back of the room have Michael Rebentish, who is our newest officer. He just started at the beginning of February. And so if you haven't had a chance to meet Michael yet, this would be a chance tonight to stop in and say hello to him, or I think we'll be doing a little more formal meet and greet at some point here in the near future at the police department, if that would be easier. We also hired an administrative assistant in the police department, Michelle Ilik Davos, and she started also in October. So she's doing a good job there as well. We have the Department of Public Works. Most of those folks have not changed. We still have one open position for an equipment operator, which we've been trying to fill for a number of months now and have not found a candidate yet, but we continue to work on that. We did hire a building and grounds technician, a gentleman named Slava Frimmerman, who just started in January. So Slava is now doing a lot of the snow removal around the downtown and the sidewalks. And in the spring and summer, we'll be working on the fields with our rec department. And then 3 transfer station operators who were there as well last year. So thank you. And then we also have elected officials working in Tracy Hall. So Lily was already mentioned. She'll be busy tomorrow all day and doing a great job. And her assistant, Judy Trussell. Cheryl Lindberg, our long-serving treasurer, and 2 assistant treasurers working under her as needed. And then the lister's office, again, Cheryl, Ernie Ciccatelli, and 1 open position in that department. We also have as mentioned, a townwide reappraisal underway right now. So we have a company called KRT Appraisal who is working on that for the town. And then we have another contracted lister who is working part-time in the lister's office named Amanda Bellier. Next slide. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about the municipal budget, and the town budget is really, again, a work that is taking a lot of effort to put together. When we started the process, we wanted to try to get some goals to shoot for here. And the goal that was agreed to after much discussion was to try to find a budget that was not going to exceed 6% for our operational expenses. And the challenges that we faced, and some of these are the same faced by the school board, was a dramatic increase in the Blue Cross Blue Shield medical insurance costs for our employees. We also ratified last February, right before the meeting last year, a collective bargaining agreement with the New England Police Benevolent Association, and that had with it a fairly significant cost increase for our collective bargained employees here of the town. Continual obligations to provide and update and appropriately the capital budget for the town. And this is something that we talked about quite a bit last year, and it was a pretty dramatic overhaul of what we needed to be putting away into the capital budget so that we are able to continue into the future with our capital equipment needs. And again, we needed to continue in that trend this year, and we have done so. And then obviously we all wanted to continue to maintain the town's current level of services and staffing. So the outcome, what we came out of that with, was not quite hitting our 6% mark on the operational piece. So our expenditure budget increase is about 8.08%. And then the total budget increase is actually 5.37 if all of our monetary articles pass tomorrow. And if we go to the next slide, that's explained a little bit more detail. So we have basically our capital budget, and it looks like we're just sliding off the edge there, Barry. If you if you can just toggle the projector for a second, I think we'll get this. Just slide it to one direct. There we go. Oh, other side though. Okay. Can people see that last column there on the left side facing out? So basically, as mentioned, this is just a little better explanation of the total pieces of the budget that came together here. As you can see, the budget itself is $6,723,893. And then the other monetary articles is 507,772. As you can see, that is down about 21%. And the reason for that is last year, we had actually built in $150,000 for a designated fund for culverts that was part of that, and another $10,000 that was part of a roadway and pedestrian safety designated fund. So this year, those went into the funds themselves and are no longer being considered other monetary articles. So that is the explanation for that decrease. And again, the number at the bottom there, 5.37, is the amount of the increase over last year's budget for the fiscal year 26 budget that we're presenting. Next slide. All right, so exploring the tax rate, as Neil pointed out, the tax rate guess right now is hypothetical. And so I want to point that out, that while we had much discussion about whether it would make sense to provide a hypothetical based on what we had last year, ultimately the select board decided against doing that, because we know that whatever number we put forth today, without knowing what our grand list value is going to be incorrect, and it will just lead to confusion. So again, exploring how this tax rate is calculated, we're taking our approved expenditures and approved monetary articles, and those are added together. And the caveat there, other than the voted exemption and the county tax. And from that total, other anticipated revenues, so revenues other than generated by the property tax, are removed. And the end result is then divided by that grand list value, and that results in our tax rate. So right now, that grand list value is probably going to be lodged sometime at the end of July. And at that point, we're going to know exactly what those tax rates are going to be. And until then, we will not really be able to give much more explanation of what you might expect. Also to note, in last year's budget under revenue, the select board had put $700,000 of surplus funds, and we had an exorbitant amount of surplus funds last year. So some of that went into designated funds. $700,000 of that was infused as revenue, and that basically helped pay down the tax bill for the residents of Norwich last year. This year, that was discussed with surplus, and we decided that we were not going to do that again. So what we're seeing here is, again, a rate that has no surplus infusion in the revenue this year. And at the bottom, we just talk a little bit about the reappraisal. So again, the denominator of the calculation is the grand list value. As Neil pointed out, we know that's going to change. We just don't know how much of an impact that's going to have on each individual parcel of land at this point. And then again, we're just looking at too many variables to really make a educated guess at this point. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are wanting to know kind of what they can expect. And the short answer is we really don't know right now until that grand list reappraisal is concluded. Next slide. So we talked about the surplus amount that we had last year that went into the revenue side, as well as into some designated funds. So this year, we had an audited $591,000 of surplus, and the select board, after some discussion and input, came up with 3 categories here that are going to be in the articles that we'll talk about later in this evening. And that is a Tracy Hall fund. So these are all designated funds where this money goes into those funds and then is taken out with select board approval for use in these categories. And again, Tracy Hall, shall the voters approve the use of $291,000 to go into that fund to be used for future improvements and renovations to Tracy Hall. In that, I will just add that we have an architectural firm based out of White River Junction that made a presentation at the last select board meeting. They have created at this point a draft report with some different ideas and a needs analysis for the building. That'll be an ongoing discussion with the select board and the community about what the priorities are, but that process is currently underway. So putting this money into that fund is going to give the town additional money to work with there as we decide what we're going to focus on for the coming year for implementation. We also have a DPW bridge fund. So the select board is putting into the article that $200,000 would go into that fund specifically. And then we have an Emerald Ash Borer Response Fund. So currently that has, I think it's about $20,000. That might be high, maybe $15,000. And what we're looking for is to supplement that with an additional $100,000. And that would be used for future mitigation of the emerald ash borer infested ash trees along the town's right-of-ways or on public land. And we have an actual subcommittee that was formed this past year who's been working very diligently about how we were going to approach that. This would basically be setting aside some money so that we would know we had funds available to tackle that problem, which will only get worse, unfortunately. So next slide, Barry. So I'm going to end with just 2 slides here that just talk a little bit about some of the things that have been worked on or some progress that's been made here over this past year. These are kind of timelined here. So again, we continue to work on creating a fulfilling working environment here at the town where we can attract and retain qualified employees. That is a continuing problem of being able to find the right people to fill the right roles and to keep them here. And I think we're making some good progress there. I know that's been one of the things that I focus on and take some pride in, that we've filled a number of the key positions at the department head levels, and we seem to be on the right track here with some stability within the town. As I mentioned, the collective bargaining agreement with the NEPBA was ratified last February. We also completed a compensation study, so kind of along the attraction and retention of employee theme. That was a way to find a third party to come in and really look at how Norwich's compensation, both wages and benefits, compared with other similar towns in Vermont and the Upper Valley. So that was completed in March. One of the kind of good news things, a Kids Bridge initiative, which I think most people are aware of, was completed in June. That was kind of a public-private combination there with the funds being raised. And then we had a great manager there who got the project completed with a lot of volunteer help from folks in the community. So that was a win. We also had kind of an unexpected bridge failure where a replacement bridge was needed on a section of Alcott Road that kind of came up in the late spring of last year and was quickly managed, and the bridge was replaced there in July. The town of Norwich personnel policy, that was a process that went over probably a year as far as start to finish time, and that was ratified by the town of Norwich Select Board in October. We also completed an energy audit, which was part of the Tracy Hall initiative. So we had a grant that funded an engineering firm to come in and do a very comprehensive look at our energy needs and how to make Tracy Hall more efficient, and come up with some ideas on how to move forward here with some new ideas. And as mentioned earlier, the Studio Nexus Architects is the architectural firm that we're working with right now. They released their draft report. It was actually in the last select board packet again, if folks are interested in reading that. And there'll be some further discussion, obviously, as we move forward. And last slide. Thanks, Barry. Again, just continuing on here with some of the initiatives in progress being made. So we have a continual work in progress here for a select board appointment of committees, and basically a select board handbook that will be used once completed in the future to help guide future work of the board. We also are taking affirmative steps on a pedestrian project on Beaver Meadow Road. This is again another project that's been underway for a long period of time, and we just signed a contract to have that work done and hopeful for completion here at the end of June. Ongoing mitigation and planning steps for Moore Lane Bridge. I think as most people are aware, we have an environmental issue going on the underside of that bridge, and it's been going on for too long. And so we are working with a engineering firm right now to come up with some ideas of what we could do to mitigate that. And I'm sure that'll be coming back into the select board here in the next month or so when the new board is seated. Ongoing work with the Emerald Ash Borer that I mentioned earlier. Ongoing work with our KRT appraisal service on the townwide reappraisal, and ongoing response to the July 2023 weather events, which were the hard rains and flooding that occurred. So right now, we have secured over $2 million in FEMA funds, which is the good news. The real good news is that right now we're anticipating the town share of that's going to be about 2.2%. So a lot of bang for our buck for the town of Norwich there, as far as 3 major culvert replacements and work to stabilize the Hemlock Road slope failure that was noted after those rains. So I believe that is the last slide. And I'm sure I and the rest of the select board would be happy to answer some questions now if there are any, or as Peter mentioned, we will be walking through the articles. So there'll be another chance there to ask a question about budget related.
Thank you, Brennan. And again, as Brennan said, questions about the presentation itself are welcome now if anybody has one. Yes. Yeah, if you would come over to the mic, that would be great. Thank you.
Since thanks for all your work on this. My question was about the health plan rates. The school board was talking about a 12% increase in rate, and you guys were talking about a 22% increase in rate. And is that because it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, and have you looked into like Anthem or other options? Or I'm just wondering if we're being held hostage to one plan. I know I've been at a couple of employers and they've walked away from Blue Cross because they're right.
So I noticed that there is a discrepancy there as well. All I can say is at the town side, that was what was presented to us by Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is our insurance provider for the town, as far as what they anticipate for the pretty substantial or exorbitant increase for this next year. I am not aware of how the school board determined their rates. It might be a different program or a different plan. We have not had a substantive discussion about switching providers. No.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Any other questions for Brennan directly about anything that came up in the presentation? All right. Seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Brennan, for the presentation and all the information. Thank you. We're going to move on to the warrant articles. I want to thank Junction Arts and Media, JAM, for being here tonight and providing the streaming ability. So thank you. Thanks, JAM. Okay, so again, we vote by Australian ballot. We take a recess from this meeting tonight at the end of the meeting, and then we meet again tomorrow all day long, 7 to 7, to vote by Australian ballot. But right now, we're going to go through the articles one by one. I'm not going out of order this year. I'm going to start Article 1. We elect a moderator and we elect the school district members. Article 2, we elect town and school district officers for terms starting in 2025. So we're going to start really with Article 3, to authorize the Board of School Directors to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year in accordance with the provisions of 16 VSA Section 562(9). Does anyone have any comments about Article 3 or questions about Article 3, which would go to the school board? Questions about Article 3? All right, moving along. Article 4, shall the voters of the Norwich Town School District determine and fix the salaries of the school board members in the sum of $500 each per year for a total of $2,500 in accordance with the provisions of 16 VSA Section 562(5). Any comments or questions about Article 4? All right, seeing none, we will move along. Article 5, shall the voters of the Norwich School District approve the school board to expend $8,274,779? I practiced that, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Questions about Article 5 for the school board? Comments about Article 5 regarding the school board budget? No comments or questions? All right. And there's a note here, and I believe this is on the warrant, so I'm going to read it. The Norwich School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $18,356, which is a 5.29%, is 5.29% higher than the per pupil education spending for the current year. Note, this includes the Dresden base assessment amount. You have a comment, sir?
Irv Tomei, New
Yes.
Boston Road.
Thank you.
I want to be sure my math's correct. That 5.29% increase means that the per pupil spending is up by $751. Is that correct? Is my math correct?
Thank you for the question. Does somebody want to tackle that on the school board? Neil, thank you.
I have to do the math, or I don't know off the top of my head.
Well,
Could
okay.
repeat the question?
I trust that your math is correct.
All right. And then I missed the chance to make a comment, which is a positive affirmative. I want to remind everyone that the income-based payment does not get affected by changes in the value to your property. And so if you are eligible for income-based payment of your school taxes, by gosh, take advantage of it. It could make the difference to how long you can stay in this town.
Thank you for the comments. All right, moving along. Article 6, to transact any other business that may legally come before the annual meeting of the Norwich Town School District. Any comments on Article 6? All right. Moving along to the town. Article 7, you all have, I believe you have this handout somewhere, right? Article 7, shall the voters approve a gross spending general town budget of $6,723,893 plus state and federal grants and gifts consistent with budgeted programs for the period July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Article 7, yes. Great, thank you.
Again. So I saw a comment on the listserv the other day, and I might put my facts wrong here, so I'm check. But I thought someone said that budget would result in somewhere around a 24% increase in property taxes. And I know you said you can't estimate, but is there some kind of a range? Or first, am I off on my memory of that? Could be. And second, is there any kind of range that you can give us to help us understand, knowing that the grand list is still coming, like what kind of impact we could have?
Brandon or member of the select board, and if you would try and paraphrase the question, that would be helpful. Pam, great, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sure. The difference between what we would collect from the voters to fund the town budget is going up 24.5%. It's in your town report. And the reason that it's going up by that amount is because of that $700,000 infusion last year of surplus funds to help lower the amount that would be collected from taxpayers. We don't have an infusion this year. So that's why it's going up by that amount. What will it do to your taxes? There's no way to know at this point until the reappraisal is done, because we figure out the tax rate, and then that tax rate is multiplied toward whatever your assessed value is. And we know everyone's assessed value will change. Some will go up more than others. So it's just really hard to predict what impact that would have on your taxes.
And the 24% again is just on the town portion of the tax rate.
That's
Bulk of it is for funding.
right. The town sets the municipal budget, the select board sets the municipal budget and the municipal tax rate. We have nothing to do with the education side. The school boards set their budget, and then the state of Vermont takes that information and they establish a homestead and a non-homestead tax rate for education funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question and the answer. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Yes. Jackie. And if you
Hi.
could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yes. Is this mic working? Is it okay? Okay.
Oh, can we turn on the mic somehow? Homer?
I'll speak up. How's that? Jackie Allen, I live on 15 Union Village Road. I have a question about the status of the common level appraisal. It's been going on for quite some time. I read the notes from the meetings and so forth, but I'm unclear. What should we expect? When will we see something? How will we know when it's done? Thank you.
Would like to,
The common level of appraisal is a comparison of our assessed values to what houses are selling for in town. Okay. The goal of the reappraisal is to try to get us to fair market value or as close to 100% as we can. So until the reappraisal is done, we won't have a correction of the CLA.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that review. I'm very clear what the process is trying to accomplish, but do we have a deadline? When are we going to know?
Oh, okay. The reappraisal is as of April 1st, when the home ownership is frozen. But the work of the reappraisal continues on. We have to file the grand list abstract by, I think it's June 4. And then after that, we go through the grievance process. And then the grand list is lodged no later than July 25th. So that would be the earliest that we would have that. But then we also have to go through a state review to get our reappraisal approved by the state. And there is a two-pronged test that they do to make sure that everything was done according to their standards. So we don't know exactly when that review will be completed. It's sometime in the fall, but the grand list has to be lodged by July 25th. It's a statutory deadline. We did, but that doesn't really tell you anything because the grand list is going to go up by a fair amount. I don't know, maybe it'll double, maybe it'll go up 60%. We don't know. So the current grand list, I think it's around 8 million, which is, it's 800,000 or 800 million divided by 100. So our grand list value that we use to calculate taxes is around $8 million. There's no way to predict that. I would never give you a number because you'll hold me to it, and I can't do that.
Could I make a comment? This is, I guess, just me speaking, and maybe nobody else agrees with me, but people get wound up about what is the tax rate. I think what we really care about, what's the dollar amount of my bill when I get it? And as people have been saying, if your assessment goes up, your tax rate goes down. And what we really want to know is if my bill was $100 this year, is it going to be $105 or $120 next year? And we can't tell you that yet.
change, I guess. Article 8. Shall the voters approve the use of 291,000 of the current surplus to fund the Tracy Hall number 13 fund for future improvements to Tracy Hall? Any questions or comments about Article 8 about Tracy Hall? Lily, yes.
That microphone is no longer operating.
Yeah, you might have to.
I have a general question about this and like what articles. No, okay. What happens if they're voted down? I honestly don't know if the surplus is not approved for the proposed uses. Where does it then go?
Thank you.
The money would stay in the general fund. And it would be part of a surplus for the following year.
Okay. That answers that. Okay, thank you. Article 9. Oh, yes, go ahead. Sorry. Sorry, I think the levels are changing. If you,
$777,000. I'm sorry, 577,000. I had that wrong. About 577,000. If we add the 291, we'd have about $875,000 to go toward the work that Tracy Hall needs.
okay, thank you for the question. Article 9. Are any other comments about Article 8? We good? All right. Article 9, shall the voters approve the use of 200,000 of the current surplus to fund the DPW Bridge Fund number 41? Comments, questions about Article 9? All right, seeing none. Article 10, shall the voters approve the use of $100,000 of the current surplus to fund the Emerald Ash Borer Response Fund number 52 for future mitigation efforts related to the EAB infestation? Sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Rimmer, Spring Pond Road. I'm a member of the Norwich Conservation Commission, and I'm co-chairing with Doug Hardy, the 9-member Emerald Ash Borer Management Subcommittee. So in terms of very quick overview, we are a group of scientists, forestry professionals, the tree warden, Matt Hall, an environmental educator, and a land conservationist are all the experts that are trying to help inform the town how to manage this invasive wood-boring beetle, the emerald ash borer, which is going to kill 99 or more % of the ash trees in our town. And Windsor County, in which we sit, has the highest density of ash of any of Vermont's 14 counties. So we've got a lot of ash here. Many of them are already infested. Some are beginning to die. A few have dropped. And over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a serious public safety issue arise along our roadsides. So the Emerald Ash Borer Response Fund, which we're hoping to increase from, I think it's got about 12,000 now, will enable us to begin removing the most hazardous trees. And we've begun, some of you have seen the red and blue marks on some of the ash trees around town. Those are trees that we've already identified as posing a danger to public safety. So that's what this fund will accomplish. And believe me, it's critical. So I hope you will vote to approve this measure tomorrow. I wish I could tell you exactly how many trees, $100,000 or $112,000 will enable us to remove. I can just give you a ballpark, somewhere between 200 and 400 trees, probably. We've taken one down on Elm Street at 17 Elm. Some of you are aware of that. And that went really smoothly. If we batch trees along sections of roadway that are particularly at high risk, I think we can save some money. So thanks. And we appreciate the select board and Brennan's support on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any select board comment on this? No? Okay. Any other? Oh, yes.
Hi, Cheryl Lindbergh. Two questions. How much is the property owner involved in the cost of taking down trees? And secondly, what about the pines and the maples that are falling as well, which are right along Beaver Meadow Road and other roads in town? So why are we not looking at all safety matters with the trees and not just this?
Thank you. Select board? Town manager? Anybody want to tackle that?
Well, we've all received a letter, I believe, from Green Mountain Power telling us that they're going to be coming through the town and taking care of some of the trees that are along the power lines. So that will help in some regard with the problem that you brought up, Cheryl. How much, I don't know. But as far as what the homeowners are contributing, every homeowner is welcome to take down trees on their own property, even if it's in the town right of way. If they feel that it's a tree that needs to be removed, they can take it down themselves if they are good with a chainsaw, or they can hire someone. But the town does have an obligation to keep the roadways safe, and we do have that right of way. So if a homeowner is unwilling or unable to do the work or fund the work themselves, then if it's a real liability for the town, then the town will need to take care of it.
Great, thank you. Article 11, before I read Article 11, just a reminder is generally speaking, you, as Cheryl did, she addressed the chair and then I referred to the select board. That's how it works around here. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Article 11, shall the voters of Norwich allow the election of Vermont residents who are not Norwich residents to be elected or appointed to town offices, not including select board or justices of the peace, or for boards or commissions that are established by state law and which are required to be composed of a majority of Norwich residents as provided in 17 Vermont VSA section 2646, subsection A1. Comments on Article 11? Lily.
Lily Tryman, Town Clerk, 236 Main Street. If you listen to my listserv posts, you know that I really enjoy data. So I went back over 20 years of elections and I looked at all of the positions that would be open to non-residents. And I looked to see how many of them were contested and when. And to be clear, I believe from this proposal, the moderator, town clerk, treasurer, lister, trustee of public funds, and cemetery commissioners would all be able to be elected from people who don't reside in Norwich. So over the last 20 years, there have been 6 contested races in those areas, not any since 2017, when the cemetery commissioner seat was contested. So I'm not going to weigh in on either side of this article. I will just remind people that you have no recall on elected officials. So if you make a mistake and that person comes from out of town, you won't be able to face them down at the transfer station. I think that was all I wanted to say. So thank you. And I'll remind everybody, you're welcome to come delve into the town vault where we have all of those records from elections for many, many years.
Thank you. Any other comments about Article 11? Looks like we have at least 2 more. Yes.
Hi, Wendy Teller Ellsberg, 60 Church Street. Quick question. Where did this article come from?
Seats, not just elected officials. And, but we have listers are open, that sort of thing. And we've had good success apparently with hiring a lister from out of town. And I think that it's good for people to know what's available. The VLCT apparently found
they were getting a lot of questions, that's the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, about how to get this because they wanted help in their towns. And so they put together a proposed article. And so I just suggested that we use what the statute suggested. And now you know about it. So it's out there, and it might be something that people think is attractive. It might be something that you don't want, but you know about it. And if you want to know more about the statute itself, we have representatives who are here from the legislature. So that's the story.
Thank you, Marcia. Other comments?
Irv Tomei, still from 528 New Boston Road. When you read the listserv tomorrow, you'll see that I've expressed my opposition to this. And that's based on the discussions that I've heard read on the listserv the past month. I strongly agree that I want people that live in this town to make decisions that affect my life. I don't want those decisions made by people from out of town. But I look forward, I've lived in this town almost 50 years. It'll be 50 years this summer. I hope to stay here a while longer. If I leave this town, I hope I don't before I die. But if I do, I don't expect at that point to continue to help run things in this town. It won't be my business anymore. But my other point is, I don't think I have to agree with one of our listers who posed some dark suppositions on the listserv. I don't have to postulate malevolent intent to be disappointed that this article doesn't explicitly tell us all of the positions that would be affected by it. I think that's information we all need. I'm grateful to Lily for giving us a list. Was that a complete list or a partial list? I would ask the moderator to ask Lily if that was a complete or a partial list. But she mentioned the moderator. I'm astonished that we could have a moderator who's not a resident of our own town. So that's why I plan to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Partial list or from a certain date, right? Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thanks for the comments and the answers. Appreciate it. Any other comments about or questions about Article 11? All right. Seeing none. Oh, yes.
John Carroll from Campbell Flat Road. I hadn't planned to speak this evening, but I wanted the opportunity to agree.
Or questions about town cemeteries and funding. Article 14, shall the voters appropriate $4,000, $348 to the Child Care Center in Norwich to be used for income-sensitive scholarships for Norwich children? Any representatives from the Child Care Center would like to speak, or anybody else make a comment or a question about this article? Article 15, shall the voters appropriate $6,000 to the Family Place to be used for the general program support, such amount being reasonably necessary for the supportive programs such as direct service through early intervention, child care payment assistance, healthy baby visits, reach up, welcome baby, parent education, playgroups, and other services, the Family Place. Any representatives? Yes.
Hi, I'm Nina Sandloud. I live on Main Street, and I'm coming to represent the Board of Directors of the Family Place, just to thank the town for all the support that they've done in the past. You just listed all the great services that are provided by the Family Place. We serve over 80 people or 80 families from Norwich, and we look forward to your ongoing support.
Thank you. Article 15. Oh, sorry. Article 16. Shall the voters appropriate $3,000 to Good Beginnings of the Upper Valley to be used for support of their programs? Good Beginnings. Any representatives from Good Beginnings of the Upper Valley? No? All right. $3,000 to Good Beginnings. Article 17, shall the voters appropriate $1,705 to the Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation to be used to support new, growing, and relocating businesses? Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation. Article 18, shall the voters appropriate $2,500 to Headrest to be used for the operation of a crisis 24/7 hotline? Headrest. Article 19, shall the voters appropriate $3,000 to Junction Arts and Media Jam, formerly known as CATV, for video recordings of meetings of local government in order for local government transparency? From the floor. Great. Article 20, shall the voters appropriate $1,500 to the Norwich American Legion to be used for the Legion's Memorial Day observance? Any representatives from the Legion here tonight? Article 21, shall the voters appropriate $10,000 to Norwich Community Nurse, Inc. to be used for partial financial support for the Norwich Community Nurse, Inc. project? Yes.
Hi, I'm Brenda Haynes and Deb Birnbaum. We're on the board of the Norwich Community Nurse. And we'd like to thank the community for all the support over the past 5 years that we've been in operation. And I'd also like to announce that we have hired a new Norwich Community Nurse. And she'll be starting in another couple of weeks. Look on the listserv for postings of her hours and availability. She lives in Norwich. Mary Stevens is her name. She lives on Dutton Hill. So we look forward to having her on board.
Great. Thank you so much.
Priscilla Vincent, Main Street. I'd like to speak in support of the community nurse, and even though our tax bills are horrendous, I think we should be investing more in this service. Some of you know that some of you know that I had occasion to have great need of the community nurse when my husband was dying, and it was incredible. I thought I was a good health advocate. I was like a deer in the headlights when we got to that point, and the community nurse gave me so much support, so much love, was there for us. And I don't know how I would have navigated that whole thing without her. And I know most people don't want to talk about, terrible health things going on. And fortunately, I didn't need her for a long time, but there are people who need her on an ongoing basis. So this is a really important service. I just really support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you. Anybody else on Article 21? Article 22, shall the voters appropriate $12,000 to the Norwich Historical Society and Community Center to support those programs that support the celebration of historic events? Yes.
I'm Sarah Rooker, Director of the Norwich Historical Society, 20 Messenger Street, Lebanon, New Hampshire. And I just wanted to first say thank you to the town for over 20 years of an appropriation for the Historical Society. It's really made a difference over the years. And just this past year, I did some counting. Like Lily, boy, do I love data. We have cared for over 1,000 books, 2,000 objects, including the town hearse and the town jail, 4,000 photographs, 2,000 objects, and well over 5,000 collections of family and archival materials for the town. And we use those items to work with students throughout the Dresden School District to help them learn and care more deeply about their home and their sense of place. And this winter, we just finished up Discover Norwich, which I know many of you were at. Over 500 people tuned in February. And we've gotten so many emails of especially new residents saying how much it's helped them understand their town. And when you have people with a sense of place and a deep sense of community, they get more engaged, which is what we're all hoping to happen here at future town meetings. So thank you all, and can't wait to keep working with everybody in town.
Thank you. Article 23, shall the voters appropriate $3,500 to the Norwich Lions Club to be used to underwrite the fireworks for the Norwich Fair? Article 23.
I thought I'd give advocates a chance to speak first, but nobody stepped up. Irv Tomei, 528 New Boston Road. Now it's my turn to be a curmudgeon, but please listen to me. I do not understand why annually we subsidize this exercise in making a lot of noise. The impulse to make a lot of noise is basically juvenile. Now that could be harmless. It's only $3,500. But let's think a bit about the wild birds that are killed every year by those explosions, by the domestic pets throughout the village who are terrorized by it, and by folks with PTSD, perhaps from battle service, perhaps from more private experiences, who are forced to relive what they worked so hard to forget. Why are we paying for this? Please vote no. Thank you.
Wendy Teller Ellsberg, 60 Church Street. Irv, you stole my word. I was going to come up here and say I'm about to be a curmudgeon, and I'm sure I'll be shamed and talked about negatively for a while to come. But I do feel a sense of moral opposition to fireworks myself. And I understand that people will laugh and say fireworks are fun and we all do it and we should just keep doing it. Personally, the research I've done into fireworks confirms some of the things that Irv was just talking about. They are toxic. They are harmful to wildlife. They can deafen wildlife, and then the wildlife can then starve because they can't find food that they find by hearing. I'm not in favor of fireworks, and I'm bothered every year when I hear our fireworks. So I'm sorry it's not patriotic and it's not fun, but I would agree. This is not a tradition I support. And I apologize to the wonderful Norwich Lions who organized this and worked so hard to put it all together, including my beloved father-in-law.
Thank you. Any other comments about Article 23? All right, seeing none, we will move along to Article 24. Shall the voters appropriate 300,706 and 376, 700 to the Norwich Public Library. So it's that time of the night when I cannot even I'm going to start this again. Shall the voters appropriate $376,000 plus $700 to the Norwich Public Library Association to be used for the operating expenses of the library? Lucinda.
I was hoping you'd say 3.7 million, but we'll let that slide tonight. Hi, I'm Lucinda Walker, 214 Old Barn Lane, Brownsville, Vermont. I am the director of your public library, the Norwich Public Library. This is my 22nd year standing before you to tell you once again, you have blown through last year's record circulation, record 37,000 people coming through the door, 37,000 visits. The library has found itself as a place again and again where people come in through the door and are surprised. We still have people who have lived in this town for over 40 years who come in and say, I had no idea. And we are so happy to see them. They're apologetic. And we're like, please, no, don't apologize. What brings you in through that library? We don't care. We just want to help you. So this is how we helped you last year. We welcomed 254 new library patrons. As of the last 9 months, we have 215 people have joined. So we're going to break that record. We have a new teen card due to new privacy laws in the state of Vermont. So you can be sure that if you have a 12-year-old, send them in. They get a special card with a sticker, which they love. Our community room was booked 288 times for community events only, not library programs. That was 268 times. But our community room, our collections, our services are used every single day. And why and how can we do this? Because of all of you who've hung out this late, all of you who are hopefully listening at home. One thing that people don't know about library funding in the state of Vermont is we are one of a handful of states that does not directly support their public libraries. Our library support from the state comes from our Department of Libraries. And they are facing, as many other agencies are, a real concern about federal funding coming this year. I just want to let you know that you will not see services change at the library because librarians know how to do stuff with spit and duct tape and string, and we can make a dollar go very long. But what's important and what I want to say is funding is local. And that's why what you do and how you vote and if you come into the library or not, or if you give to our annual appeal or not, it's so important, your local support. So I just want to thank people. I want to thank you for coming in. I want to thank you for calling us or sending us emails. I love the shout outs on the listserv. We do tech help twice a week. Please come in. I need to thank our volunteers who dedicated over 2.5 months worth of service with their hours last year. Our rejuvenated, re-energized friends group. Check out their soup sale on March 22nd. And the incredible staff who come in every single day wanting to be the best public servant they can be. And when we see kids coming in and taking things out by droves, and we see people of all ages coming in and thanking us, I'm telling you, in this day and age, to feel like you're making a difference means the world to us. And thank you for helping us make a difference.
Thank you, Lucinda. Any other comments or questions about Article 24? Article 25, shall the voters appropriate $1,822 to the Public Health Council of the Upper Valley to be used for continuing public health education for Norwich residents, particularly in the areas of substance abuse, elder care, oral health, emergency preparedness, and healthy living. Public Health Council of the Upper Valley. Any representatives or comments? Yes.
Hello, Tracy Hayes, Carpenter Street. I'm also the business administrator for the Public Health Council of the Upper Valley. I could give you a long update, as you can imagine, with things happening in DC, but I'm going to keep it local. First, I want to appreciate the local support from Norwich, as well as many of the towns in Vermont and New Hampshire. We are a true Upper Valley representative. We're a leader in public health, supporting people, professionals, organizations, building healthier and more equitable communities. What we do is we focus on health disparities and increasing limited access and care, are trying to address limited access and care and increase resources, address constraints on resources by partnerships. We really work together with, there's many organizations that are working on the same thing. We bring partners together to maximize resource as well as strength and unity. We're requesting support from the towns. This helps us to become more flexible in our response, such as with the floods. We were able to come together with our partnerships and address those kind of things. And we have many core public health services that we address. We talked about in our request for funding. Some concrete things that you might know about. Last year, we hosted 6 free flu vaccine clinics and served over 1,000 in giving free flu vaccines. That's every October. Be aware that we put postings as far wide as we can and try to vary the communities. We also support a lot of services for different age groups, but particularly for older adults. This year, we've started to do more fiscal sponsorship for new organizations to expand services, as well as increasing our collaborations and advocacies. I'm sorry, there's just so many. I'm going to try to pare this down. I know I'm talking a long time. There's a lot to talk about. Dental care is a real problem and constraint in our area. And we really are focusing on convening the voices of underserved community members and raising them up with their lived experience and tailoring solutions to address unique health challenges and inequities. We are asking for 50 cents a person from the town of Norwich. If you would like more information, we have contact information in part 3, page 10 and 11. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Article 26, shall the voters appropriate $1,200 to Senior Solutions, an area agency on aging, to provide social services benefiting Norwich residents age 60 and older? Any representatives of Senior Solutions? Article 27, shall the voters appropriate $3,750 to Southeastern Vermont Community Action to be used for emergency needs, referral to and assistance with assessing needed services, financial counseling, and food and nutrition education? Any representatives from SEVCA? Article 28, shall the voters appropriate $2,000 to the Special Needs Support Center of the Upper Valley to help children and adults with special needs and their families meet their unique challenges through advocacy and program support? Any representatives from Special Needs Support Center of the Upper Valley? Article 29, shall the voters appropriate $2,000 to the Upper Valley Trails Alliance to be used for trail planning and work? Representatives of the Upper Valley Trails Alliance in the House? Article 30, shall the voters appropriate $18,500 to the Visiting Nurse Association Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire to help support the home health, maternal and child health, and hospice care provided in patients' homes and in community settings? Visiting Nurse Association Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire. Article 31, shall the voters appropriate $5,300 to the White River Council on Aging to be used for home delivered meals, transport, and social services? Council on Aging. Article 32, shall the voters appropriate $2,500 to Windsor County Mentors to be used for mentoring youth? Windsor County Mentors. Article 33, shall the voters appropriate $2,500 to WISE, Women's Information Service, to be used to support WISE's crisis intervention and support services and prevention education? Anybody from WISE like to speak? Article 34, shall the voters appropriate $3,000 to Youth in Action to be used for operating expenses that support our community service efforts? Youth in Action. No? Okay. Article 35, shall the voters require that taxes be paid in U.S. funds in 2 installments? The first installments will be due and accepted at the Town of Norwich Finance Office on or before 4:30 p.m. August 29th, 2025, and the balance will be due at that same location on or before 4:30 p.m. February 13th, 2026. A legible, official United States Post Office postmark / cancellation, not a postage machine date, mind you, will determine the payment date for all mailed payments. Interest on overdue taxes beginning with the first installment will be charged at 1% per month for the first 3 months and 1.5% per month thereafter. All delinquent taxes will be subject to a 4%, scratch that, a 4% collection fee in accordance with Vermont statutes after February 13th, 2026. Do you guys want me to read this again? No? Okay. Any comments on Article 35? Article 35? Comments, questions? All right. Okay. We are getting to the end of our rainbow. Article 36, discussion of other non-binding business. And these are actually motions that we can vote on the floor because they're non-binding. They tend to be ceremonial in nature. And some years we have them and some years we don't. But if anybody has any non-binding business they would like to raise. Yes.
Cheryl Lindbergh, and I'm sorry that we didn't have a memoriam for Jonathan Vincent in our town report this year. Jonathan was a lister and served as a lister until he passed. And Jonathan did great things, and he was spunky and committed, and we miss him. And I just wanted to recognize Jonathan. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. Lisa.
Hi, Lisa Christie, Dutton Hill Road in Norwich. I could have missed this because I am lucky enough to be jet lagged at the moment. But I just wanted to recognize Lily Tryman and her service on the school board, because today was sort of her last official piece of business as a member of our board. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Any other non-binding business? All right, here's where we do make a motion to adjourn a recess. John can help me with this if I'm getting this wrong, because this meeting continues. This meeting is not over. It's just recessing until tomorrow morning when we can vote in person in Australian ballot. So does somebody like to make a motion from the floor to recess until tomorrow morning? Yeah, Priscilla. Thank you for the correction. Thank you. So a motion to recess until tomorrow evening when the polls close at 7 p.m. in this very room. Would someone like to second that motion? Lily seconds the motion. All in favor? Anybody want to stay? No. Okay. All right. We are adjourned, or we are in recess until tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Yes, if you could help with the chairs, if you're able, we'd really